Hello, Rejoice family and those beyond Rejoice. Welcome back to our discussion of exhaustion, grief, anxiety, and depression. And last time I spent a lot of time on the things in our environment that lead to depression. I'm going to spend a little bit more time with that this time, but most of this one, and this should be a shorter video, is leaning into some things that we can do to help us pay attention to what makes our life better. So to start with, I am recording this 2 weeks before our national elections. There's a lot of things in our culture right now that are telling you to be anxious, to be fearful, and so I think we need to talk honestly about what we continually get bombarded with that can increase our feelings of depression, our feelings of anxiety, our feelings of hopelessness. So I've talked about this a little bit more in my Faith in the Digital Age discussions, but we live in a world where we've constructed many things that aren't real helpful for our emotional well-being. So we live in a world of a 24-hour news cycle, and I'm not saying you shouldn't be engaged and know what's going on in the world. I'm absolutely not saying that. But one of the things that news does is it can skew our perspective of reality, can make us feel less safe than we really are. And news continues to keep you hooked in. The reason it can feed a 24-hour news cycle is it continues to sell you on worry, on anxiety, so that you have to keep coming back to figure out, what's going on in my world, and it heightens that sense of anxiety that's going on. And again, I would tell you to pay attention as you're engaging with news programming, for example. If you're watching it on TV, if you're watching it through social media, and again, especially with social media, be careful about your sources. But if you're watching it, what's going on? Are you feeling more anxious? Are you feeling less safe? Are you feeling less hopeful? With that, and going into the whole world of social media, and social media is an advertising platform. And I don't think most people realize that, but one of the things that social media does is it continually presents you with things that it thinks you want to purchase, and it's telling you this is what you need to be happy, but you're also entering into a platform where you're comparing yourself against other people, comparing yourself against other people's achievements, their lives, and what they are presenting on that screen to you. And comparison does not make us happy. Comparison, or to use the biblical term, coveting, wanting what our neighbor has, steals our joy away from what we have and what we should be happy with. And the other reality is social media only shows us what the other person wants to show us. So it's showing us the best part of what they want you to perceive, and they're not showing you all the scars and the warts and all those things. That typically is not what most people will show on social media. In the lead up to an election cycle, we live in a polarized society right now, and fitting in certain contexts is a drain on us. We want to belong. We want to be in a place where we are accepted for who we are, all of who we are, and that takes being able to wrestle with differences, being able to accept people even when they don't agree with you, and that's not often the world that we live in. That may not be the world we encounter in our families at this point. It may not be the world that we encounter in churches or schools, and that can be really hard. And so I want to acknowledge that is a thing that's going on in our society, especially as you get closer and closer to this election cycle, that is ramping up that pressure that some people feel. And then there's also just the reality that we live often very lonely, very isolated lives, that we may not know our neighbors very well, and especially this time of COVID-19 has put some stress on that, because we as humans are designed to be social creatures. And as I mentioned the last time, we are one of the first groups, probably the first group of mammals and the first group of humans to disassemble our groups, to be moving away from family networks, to be to becoming unengaged from many of the social things that make us more joyful, make our life seem more happy. So those things are all out there, and I want to acknowledge them. I want to put them out there, but I also want to now move to a story. And this is a story that Johann Hari tells in his book, Lost Connections. It's a story of a cow. So early in the 21st century, South African psychiatrist named Dr. Derek Summerfield was sent to Cambodia. So he had been working in South Africa with depression. He'd been helping with pharmaceutical companies as they sold depressants or antidepressants. And so he was going to Cambodia to try and open up the market there. And so he arrives in Cambodia, and there wasn't really a good word for depression in the language. So he's trying to describe this kind of overwhelming sense and feeling of sadness. And so the doctors that were there said, "Oh yeah, we have some people like this." And so then he talks about these antidepressants which treat this. And they say, "Oh yes, we have those." And he knows that the pharmaceuticals have not been there, so he's curious about this. And so they tell him a story about, well, we had not too long ago, we had a rice farmer who'd been working in his rice field, which is what he'd been doing all of his life, but he happened to come across a mine that had been laying there dormant for a long time, and he lost one of his legs, and so we gave him a prosthetic leg. But every time he went to go work in the rice paddy, it caused him a lot of physical pain, and it got really hard for him to go and do his work. And it was making him sad. It was making him despondent, making him lose hope. And so we gathered together, and we decided that, well, yes, it makes sense that he's going into this environment where his leg is causing him pain because it's submerged in water. So he probably can't be a good rice farmer. But there's nothing that says he couldn't be a dairy farmer. So we bought him a cow. And, then he had a place in the village that he could provide milk for the village, milk and all kinds of dairy products. And he could work without feeling physical pain because he wouldn't have to go into the rice field. And all of a sudden, his depression, his sadness, his hopelessness, it went away because he had a new purpose. He had a new place. He had a new job. So what we're going to do today is we're going to look for cows. And so what I would like you to do, and this is kind of the exercise that I'd like you to do over this next week. So I'd like you to take a piece of paper or two pieces of paper, either a piece of paper front and back or two pieces of paper. And on one piece of paper, I want you to think about what sparks joy for you, what sparks happiness, what sparks hope. And I know the sparking joy is kind of the Marie Kondo language of, holding something and saying, well, does this spark joy for me? And I think there's some wisdom in that, but, I'm going to go beyond things. So what are relationships? Who are the people that when you interact with them, that it sparks joy for you? That you come out of that and you feel built up. You come out of that and you feel better than when you began that conversation. Or, that person walks into the room and there's a sense to where you feel seen and you see them as well. Now, I'm not anti-things. So are there things in your home that spark joy? Are there things that, you look at them and you feel a sense of joy or satisfaction with them? What are things that you do? What are experiences that spark joy for you? Is it, going for a walk? Or is it, going and being out in nature, going to a park? Is it having a picnic? Is it, what is it for you? What are the things that you do that bring you joy? So this one may sound a little weird, but what are the things that you wear that bring you joy? So if you pay attention closely in a lot of these recordings, you'll know that I'm almost always wearing a button-up shirt. Part of that is because those make me feel better as I do this. I feel like I'm in the right thing for what I'm doing. And there is a dynamic called enclothed cognition, to where if you give people, for example, in testing, if you give people a white coat and you tell them it is a doctor's coat and they wear this when they go and they do a science test or a math test, wearing that coat, they will perform better. If you give people that same coat and tell them it's an artist's smock and then have them do something creative, they'll do something creative. If you have a person who wears a suit and they feel more powerful as they wear a suit, or they put on workout clothes and they feel like they work out better. Now, it's something that's going on in your mind. It's not that the clothes have some kind of magic woven with them. It's in how you feel about being in them. And so, what are the things that you wear? You put them on and you wear them and you feel better when you wear them. On the flip side, again, if you are continually at home and you're wearing pajamas all the time, you probably feel a certain way. What are the things that you participate in that spark joy? Again, this is kind of like the experiences piece, but there are also the could be something as watching a certain sports team on TV, or watching a certain show, or things like that. There are things that do spark joy. What are memories that will spark joy? There's nothing wrong with going and saying, okay, I'm going to hold in my mind this memory, this time that makes me feel happy. And you can go on and on with the list. What are things that you eat that make you feel joy? And I don't want to use food as kind of a numbing agent, but there is something to a good home-cooked meal. What are things that you may do around the house? So for a lot of people, cleaning, for example, is something that brings a sense of order, something that brings joy. Now on the other side of the paper, or the other page, I want you to take the converse of this. What are the things that extinguish happiness, hope, joy? And again, so you can go down the list. Are there people who, when you spend time with them, you come out of that experience feeling drained? Most people will have people like that. Are there things that just feel like a weight? And again, this is the whole Marie Kondo thing, where you hold it, and does it spark joy for you? If it doesn't, then you let go of it. But there are things that, again, they just become clutter for us. They become things that then, instead of becoming items of joy, they become things that are just one more thing around. Are there experiences? Are there things that you do, at school, at work, and you may or may not be able to control all these, that are soul crushing, that make you feel drained when you do them? Unfortunately, for some of us right now who are continually doing things on Zoom may feel like something that is draining, because it's a substitute experience for presence. Are there things that you wear that you just don't feel good about yourself in? Are there things that you participate in that, again, they make you angry, they make you frustrated, they don't bring you joy in the midst of it? Are there memories that you get caught in that don't make you feel good about yourself? Again, most of us have these things, these tracks that come up at various points, the things that our mind will play over and over again to tell us that we're not good enough, that we're not smart enough. To pay attention, what are they? So this is kind of the exercise for this week, is to kind of start listing out what are some of those things. And then, at the end of this week, I want you to kind of look at that list and say, are there things on the list that are draining me that I can let go of? or that I don't have to participate in as much? And on the other side, are there things on the joy list that I can include more of those things in my life, that I can pay attention to, you know, what I'm wearing, what I'm doing, what I'm participating in, who I'm spending time with, and can I intentionally bring more of that into my life? So again, I hope this is helpful. We're going to continue on next week. We're going to go a little bit more into how we continue to bring joy, and we're going to spend some more time in the future on grief. We're going to spend a little bit more time looking anxiety and depression. But again, I hope this is helpful for you, and I hope you have a great week.